Okay, let's dive into this. 1999 MLS Cup, a pivotal event in Major League Soccer history, and it's the fourth edition of the championship. What stands out to me immediately is how this game was not just a rematch between DC United and the Los Angeles Galaxy, but also a reflection of how both teams had evolved since their inaugural clash in 1996. Before we talk about the game itself, could you walk us through the broader context of this moment? Why was this matchup particularly significant?
Absolutely. So, this game was key not just because it was a rematch of the first ever MLS Cup, but also because these teams were at the top of their conferences during the regular season. DC United was already establishing itself as the league's first dynasty. They'd won 2 out of the first 3 MLS Cups and were back for a 4th consecutive final. On the other hand, the Galaxy, despite having immense talent, still hadn't claimed a title. This matchup felt like the elite showdown Major League Soccer wanted, with each team having its own narrative of dominance versus redemption.
That's fascinating. It sounds like DC United had this palpable momentum going into the game. But what about the Galaxy? I read that they made some interesting adjustments during the season, including replacing their coach. How did that impact their performance leading up to this final?
Right, the Galaxy took a bold step mid-season by firing their head coach, Octavio Zambrano, and bringing in Sigi Schmid, who had built quite a reputation through his work at UCLA. Under Schmid, the team really tightened up its defense, setting a league record for the fewest goals allowed in a regular season. They were incredibly disciplined at the back, with Kevin Hartman earning Goalkeeper of the Year and Robin Fraser named Defender of the Year. Yet, despite this defensive excellence, their performance in the postseason featured narrow escapes and dramatic shootouts. They had to fight tooth and nail to get to this final.
That contrast between DC United's steady dominance and the Galaxy's roller coaster journey really set the stage here. So the match happens on November 21st, 1999, at Foxboro Stadium. Let's talk about that venue. This was a return to Foxborough, right? And it wasn't without its quirks.
Exactly. Foxboro Stadium had hosted the 1996 final, and this time around it brought some unusual challenges. For instance, the field conditions were less than ideal, to say the least. The stadium had just hosted a New England Patriots NFL game, so the pitch was visibly scarred, muddy in places, and narrowed to just 68 yards. That drew criticism from the players and even played a role in key moments, like Galaxy goalkeeper Kevin Hartman mishandling a backpass that led to one of DC's goals.
Oh, we'll get to that infamous Hartman mistake. But before that, let's break down the game itself. From what I understand, DC United wasted no time asserting themselves, scoring 2 goals in the first half. Can you take us through those moments and how they unfolded?
Sure. The first goal for DC came around the 19th minute. They won a throw-in deep in Galaxy territory, which Marco Echeverri launched into the box. It caused chaos. Jaime Moreno capitalized on a defensive lapse, pouncing on a loose ball after Galaxy's attempts to clear it failed. Then, just before halftime, Ben Olsen made his mark. This goal came directly from a Hartman error. He misplayed a backpass under pressure, giving Olsen the perfect opportunity to slot it home. Interestingly, Olsen's performance earned him the Man of the Match award, and he was a standout player throughout.
And Olsen was part of the league's Project 40 program, a development initiative for young players, right? I imagine that was a pretty big deal for him, getting that kind of recognition in such a high-stakes game.
Exactly. It was a testament to his potential and the success of that program. Olsen was just 22 at the time, and his relentless energy on the wing caused constant problems for the Galaxy throughout the match. That kind of performance on the league's biggest stage really underscored his rise as one of MLS's brightest young stars.
Now, what about the Galaxy? It sounds like they had moments where they could have shifted the momentum, but didn't capitalize. What was going wrong for them offensively?
In one word, frustration. The Galaxy struggled to break through DC's defense. Richie Williams, playing as DC's defensive midfielder, was particularly effective at disrupting their playmakers like Mauricio Cienfuegos and Carlos Hermosillo, who just couldn't get going. They also had a big opportunity in the first half. A header from Danny Pena hit the post, and there was a follow-up scramble in the box that led to a controversial moment. Galaxy players argued that DC's Richie Williams had used his hand to clear the ball, but the call didn't go their way.
Ah, yes, refereeing played a significant role in this match. The Galaxy had complaints, not just about that no call, but also about a couple of other incidents. What's your take on how the officiating affected the game?
Tim Wayland, the referee, came under a lot of scrutiny. Beyond the handball incident, there were 2 penalty shots that the Galaxy felt were ignored. One involving a challenge on Kobe Jones. After the game, Galaxy coach Sigi Schmid, along with some of his players, was fined for criticizing the officiating. It's one of those situations where officiating becomes part of the post-match narrative, which is unfortunate but not uncommon in high-stakes games like this.
So by the end of the match, it's clear. DC United cemented their legacy with their 3rd MLS Cup in 4 years. What did this victory mean for them and for the league as a whole?
For DC United, it solidified their status as MLS's first dynasty, and arguably its most dominant team in those early years. For the league, this win showcased the legitimacy and growing competitiveness of MLS. But it also sparked conversations about parity, because DC had been so consistently dominant at a time when the league was designed to foster competitive balance. It's funny, Commissioner Don Garber even said he thought having a dominant team was good for MLS overall, despite how it might appear.
And of course, both teams went on to represent MLS in the 2000 CONCACAF Champions Cup, where the Galaxy would finally get their revenge. A fitting follow-up. Well, this was a lot to unpack, but it really gives a sense of how pivotal this match was, not just for the 2 teams, but for the league's narrative at the time. Thanks for walking us through it.
My pleasure. It's always interesting to revisit these cornerstone moments in sports history. This one in particular really had everything: drama, legacy building, and some unforgettable performances.